thanks. Returning again to fentanyl for just a second, Secretary Blinken, you have talked about how important this is, top of the agenda, and both you and Secretary Bárcena have outlined a lot of very important steps. But as you know, President López Obrador was very slow in recognizing the extent of Mexico's role in this crisis. And even now we're hearing a little bit of denial about whether it's produced here or not. So my question is, if you come away now thinking you have a strong, firm, solid commitment from the President to really do all it takes to combat the production and transport of fentanyl. And then my second question, you also have spoken a couple of times today about the importance of human rights within the context of law enforcement. In Mexico, under this government, the military has taken on extraordinary powers, economic powers, political powers, and in law enforcement. So and as you know, its human rights record is quite notorious. So my question is, to what extent does that role, the dominance of the military, complicate U.S. efforts to work with Mexican law enforcement? Thank you.
Your question is asked to Mexico or to the U.S.?
Mostly to Blinken, but feel free to join in.
No, please, por favor. No,
I want to ask
Blinken.
Bueno, yo quería saber para quién se dirige.
First, let me start by saying this. We were very appreciative of President López Obrador for the time that he gave us this morning, and we had an extremely positive, productive conversation. I think it reflects the fact that President López Obrador and President Biden from day one have set a common direction for the relations between our countries, and our job has been to carry that out and try to make it real. And when it comes to fentanyl, synthetic opioids, I have no doubt about Mexico's commitment to working collaboratively to deal with this huge challenge that we both face. Because it's affecting people in Mexico just as it's affecting so many Americans. And it's not simply a commitment of words, as important as that is. It's a commitment in deeds. You've heard us talk already about the work that we've been doing in collaboration, in partnership, working together to seize and investigate clandestine labs for the production of fentanyl, preventing the diversion of the precursor chemicals. In fact, Mexico came up with a very important initiative today that we're going to follow through on. I think it'll be incorporated, as the Foreign Minister said, in the work of the Global Coalition against synthetic opioids that we established this summer to get at the diversion of chemical precursors. We were working just a few weeks ago with here in Mexico with our Canadian counterparts as part of the North American Leaders Summit, again on this question of how to effectively control chemical precursors, including by doing things collaboratively together on information sharing, on labeling, on having companies that are engaged in selling or transferring precursors know who their customers are. This is usually important because what tends to happen is a company may be engaged, as Alicia said, in absolutely legal trade of a chemical that's used for pharmaceutical purposes, and then it gets diverted to an entity that uses it for the production of a synthetic opioid. So the protocols that we're working to establish together and have a common standard with our three countries and then through the Global Coalition with countries around the world will help prevent the diversion. We've been already increasing information sharing among law enforcement on synthetic drugs and on precursors. And as you've heard already today, work that Mexico is doing to strengthen security at its ports, both maritime and land ports of entry, is very significant. 95% of the fentanyl that we're seizing that's coming into the United States is coming through legal ports of entry. So the work that we're doing together to strengthen security there, to strengthen screening, all of that's being done in close collaboration. And I think there's some steps that Mexico has announced recently, including expanding the criminal watch list to 69 new chemicals. That's very significant because we've seen how these particular chemicals are often diverted into illicit use, revamping the import-export system. And by the way, Mexico is actually a leading country in the way that it very carefully works to regulate chemicals coming into Mexico. And as we've mentioned, seizing hundreds of tons of precursor chemicals, all of this under the administration of President Lopez Obrador. So we have a very strong partner, and today we actually strengthened that partnership even more. With regard to the military, I think as we see it, the military is one of the most trusted institutions in Mexico. It's played a critical role, along with other law enforcement organizations, in dealing with organized crime, transnational criminal enterprises, drugs, arms trafficking, and as the Attorney General said just recently, with the extradition of a notorious criminal, they lost lives in bringing him to justice before he was extradited. We also did discuss today the importance in everything we do, whether it's the military, whether it's law enforcement, in all of our organizations, the imperative and the centrality of human rights, because first of all, it reflects the values that we share. Second, it's so important to make sure that we have and hold the trust of our citizens, and upholding and respecting human rights is critical to that. And those citizens and those communities are essential partners in actually advancing law enforcement and dealing with all of the challenges that we talked about, especially everything that goes with these criminal enterprises that are engaged in trafficking of one thing or another, guns, drugs, people. So I think there was a very important discussion of that today. And again, I think it reflects our common values and common commitments.